I started sleeping with dogs at the age of 16. My name is Kira, and this is my truth. It's a story I've kept hidden for years, but I know I have to tell it now so others can learn from my mistakes. If anyone had told me I'd be in this situation, sleeping with dogs just to make money, I would never have believed them. But it was my life, and this is how it all happened. Before the world knew me as the girl who slept with dogs, I was just Kira, the only child of Chike and Zola. We lived in a village called Asari, and I want you to understand something about us. When I say we were poor, I mean we were the kind of poor that hollowed you out. I remember the constant ache in my stomach and the way my parents' faces were etched with worry over the simplest things, like where our next meal would come from. My father, Chike, worked as a night watchman for the wealthy families on the other side of the hill. He would leave every evening and return with coins so small it felt like a joke. My mother, Zola, couldn't work. She had to stay at home, looking after me, and the three of us barely had enough to survive. I had to stop going to school because we could no longer afford the fees. The hunger that followed wasn't just an ache, it was a constant, cruel companion, a part of our family that never left. And then my father died. He was at his post, working his shift, when his heart simply gave out. It was as if he could no longer carry the weight of our poverty. My mother and I were left with nothing but our tears. After my father was laid to rest, my mother, Zola, was not the same. The light in her eyes just seemed to fade day by day, and soon she fell ill and died, leaving me alone in the world. I became an orphan. Our only relative, my Uncle Kofi, then appeared and took our small hut, claiming it was his by right. I was left with nothing and forced onto the harsh streets of Asari, where I found myself sleeping under the great bridge of Asari and in the open gutters, just trying to survive. Life on the streets was a harsh master. Every day was a fight for survival, a constant struggle against a world that seemed to have forgotten me. I took on any quick job I could find, hauling water, breaking firewood, doing anything to earn a few coins. But it was never enough. The money disappeared as quickly as it came. In my darkest moments, I would sit alone under the great bridge of Asari and close my eyes and whisper a prayer for my late parents to come and take me home, to end my suffering. But my life changed one evening. I was selling my last orange in the rain when a black car pulled up. A woman named Lena stepped out. I thought she was there to buy something, but she just looked at me. "Why are you sitting alone in the rain?" she asked. I told her I had nowhere to go, that I slept under the great bridge of Asari. She offered to take me to her house, but I refused. I knew you couldn't trust anybody. "Please don't be afraid," she said. "Come with me. I am not a bad person." I made the choice to follow her. When we got to our house, she gave me a warm meal, and for the first time in I don't know how long, I ate until my stomach was full. She gave me clean clothes, and the feeling of them against my skin was like a dream. In that moment, surrounded by kindness, it truly felt like I had stepped into paradise. And from that day on, my life was forever changed. But that peace didn't last long. After a week, Lena called me to sit down with her. The warmth I'd felt from her suddenly seemed to vanish. She said, "I have been good to you, but you need to start making money, just like I do." I nodded quickly. "Yes, I can work. I can do anything for you." Then she told me about the job. She said, "You will be paid a lot of money. You will become very rich. My clients, they don't like women, but they need women to play with their pets." I didn't understand it all. I just repeated her words, "Play with their pets?" She looked at me and explained it plainly. "Yes, to satisfy their dogs." The cup of juice I was holding fell from my hands, splashing across the floor. In that moment, I felt like I was no longer sitting with Lena. but with the devil himself. Never! I would never sleep with dogs just for money. I screamed at her, my voice raw with fury. So this is how you make your money? She stayed calm, her face completely empty of emotion. You're an orphan, she said, as if that explained everything. Just one night, and you will become rich. Think about it. But I wouldn't listen. I will never do that just to make money. I screamed again. This is what you do? Lena just looked at my anger and began to laugh. You're not a child anymore. I can't keep feeding you, she said, her voice like ice. I picked you from the streets and gave you a good life. Now it's your turn to help yourself. One night, Kira. Just one night. I looked at her and I was burning inside. I would rather die than do such a thing. I am only 16. What you are asking is a sin, I screamed at her. Poverty is the real sin, she replied, her smile not reaching her eyes. Then I will go back to my poverty, I shouted. I dropped the glass cup in my hand, not caring as it shattered on the floor, and began walking out of the room. She saw me going and did nothing to stop me. She just stood there, smiling. The sight of it filled me with a deep terror. I walked faster, a desperate flight out of her house, out of her life. I left the paradise I had found, and I went back to the streets. I can't sleep with dogs. 3 days after I walked out of her house, I found myself back under the Great Bridge of Asare. The hunger came back, but this time it was a different kind of pain. It was a cruel reminder of the good life I had just left behind. The food Lena gave me, the feeling of clean clothes, I had gotten used to them. Going back to the streets now felt like falling into a deeper, colder hell. In my desperation, I decided to seek out my mother's sister, Auntie Ngozi. I found her, and I explained my situation, telling her I had nowhere to go. She sat me down and gave me a plate of food, and for a moment, I felt a glimmer of hope. But then she looked at me with a weary expression. Kira, she said, her voice gentle but firm, you are old enough now to take care of yourself. I cannot keep you here. You must go. I ate the food, savoring every last bit of it. At least she had given me that. Then I got up and walked out, once again, alone in the world. That night, I went back under the Great Bridge to sleep, but it was not the same. Other people were there, and some of them were men. I didn't know what came over them, but suddenly, they moved toward me. I knew what they wanted to do. I ran as fast as I could, darting into the deep, dark streets, not even knowing where I was going. I kept running until I found a big tree and collapsed behind it, praying that the darkness would hide me. The next morning, as I sat behind that tree, I knew what I had to do. The suffering was too much to bear. I finally admitted that Lena was right. I had to start making money for myself. I walked to a woman on the street and asked if I could borrow her phone. She handed it to me, and I dialed Lena's number, a sequence of digits I had memorized without even realizing it. The phone rang just once before she picked up. Lena, it's me. It's Kira, I said, my voice barely a whisper. My words came out in a rush, a sad confession. I'm ready to do the job. I'm ready to sleep with dogs if it means an end to this suffering. I hung up the phone and the tears just came. I knew I had made a terrible decision. I never thought a day would come when I would agree to do such a thing, but there was no other choice. The worst part of it all was knowing there was nobody left to advise me, no one to tell me what to do or what not to do. My parents were already gone. I went back to Lena's house. The next morning, she looked at me with a cold certainty. You made the right decision, she said. You won't regret this. She promised that after today, my life would change for good and my suffering would be gone forever. I smiled, a weak, empty gesture that didn't reach my eyes. The next morning, after I ate the food she gave me, Lena told me to get ready. She handed me a very short dress, and I put it on. I followed her to her car, and we drove to a place I had never seen before. It was a massive, beautiful mansion, not like a regular house, but more like a fortress. There were tall, silent men guarding the gate. Lena spoke with them, and they opened the gates without a word. We drove inside and entered the main building. It was huge, a confusing maze of hallways and rooms. Lena led me to a living room where a man sat on a high chair like a king, with two other men sitting on either side of him. Lena went ahead of me and began speaking with the man who sat like a king. I could hear every word. "This is the girl I told you about," she said. The man looked me up and down, a slow, cold smile spreading across his face. "Is she ready for the job?" he asked. "Yes, boss, she is ready," Lena replied, her voice completely flat. "Do you think my dogs will like her?" he asked. "She looks young and beautiful. This is exactly what the dogs want." Lena gave me a signal to come forward. My feet felt like lead, but I went, trembling. The man stared at me for a long moment, then commanded, "Turn around." I did as he said. He laughed, a cruel, cold sound, and told his guard to get me ready. "Take her away," he said, and the words fell like a death sentence. "My dogs are already hungry." Two men came and took me by my arms. I looked at Lena as they led me away, and she just mouthed the words, "Go, girl." They took me to a cold, empty room that held nothing but a bed. In front of my eyes, they removed my clothes, leaving me completely naked. I thought they would be the ones to harm me, but they didn't. They simply turned and walked out, leaving me alone in the terrifying silence. I sat there, alone and completely exposed. The silence in the room was a heavy blanket of dread. Then, with a sudden click, the door swung open again. Two massive American dogs walked in, their shoulders broad and their eyes fixed on me. The door shut behind them, leaving me alone with these two hungry-looking beasts. I could see their pink tongues as they licked their teeth, and my heart began to pound in my chest. I tried to calm my racing mind, telling myself over and over, "They are just animals, they're just dogs." My last hope was that they weren't smart enough, that they couldn't be a part of this evil. But in the back of my mind, a terrible question echoed. How could dogs do such things? But then the door opened again. 3 older men walked into the room, all of them big enough to be my father. My heart started beating so fast I thought it might burst from my chest. One of them spoke, his voice calm and cold. "Hey, don't be scared," he said, as if there was nothing to fear. "We won't touch you at all. It's our dogs who will do the work. We just watch it happen." It was then that I finally understood. The money, the clothes, the mansion, it was all for this. They didn't want the dogs to harm them, they just wanted to watch it happen. My voice trembled as I asked, "So all you want is to watch your dogs? You spend millions of dollars just for that?" The 3 men laughed loudly and said, "Yes, you're right. Money is not a problem for us. Now stop asking questions and do what you came here to do." I tried to stay calm, telling myself that after tonight, all my suffering would be over. I had never been with anyone before, and I knew this would be the worst night of my life. The men came closer and held my arms, their grip like iron. They moved aside, making a clear path for the dogs. My body trembled and I began to cry harder than I ever had before. My screams were so loud I imagined they could be heard far beyond the walls of the mansion. The dogs moved toward me and I was shocked, for they seemed smarter than I ever thought they would. They acted in ways I never could have expected. When it was over, someone opened the door and the dogs left. The men stayed. One of them, the one who sat like a king, walked over and looked down at me. "How was it?" he asked. I was still lying on the floor like a log, unable to move or speak. I said, "How was the first time? Answer me," he shouted, his voice hard. I managed to get the words out. "Sir, it was fine." He shook his head and a cruel smile appeared on his face. "Don't say that next time," he told me. You should say it was delicious. I nodded, my eyes filled with tears, and repeated the word he wanted. It was delicious, sir. The men all laughed together, a cruel, cold sound that echoed in the empty room. As they walked out, the last man turned to me. "Call us boss, not sir," he said. "We are your bosses now." "Yes, boss," I replied quickly, my voice flat, just wanting them to go. They left me alone in the room, and in the darkness, I collapsed onto the floor. It was nighttime, and even though the bed was right there, I just fell asleep. The next morning, I woke up to a shocking sight. My body was covered in blood. I quickly went to the bathroom and cleaned myself, scrubbing until the blood was gone. I was so exhausted, I just thought the job was over. I sat there, a hollow shell, waiting for them to open the door, waiting for my freedom and my money. I didn't know it was just the beginning.
2 guards came and opened the door. I stood up, ready to leave, but they shouted, Sit down there." I sank back down, my hope gone in an instant. "Please, I already did the job," I pleaded, my voice breaking. "What else do you want?" One of the men answered without emotion. "You have to feed the rich dogs their morning food." And just like that, they left. The door closed and I sat there, tears streaming down my face. I knew what this meant. I knew the dogs would be back. I had wondered what terrible thing I had gotten myself into, and now I knew. That morning, they brought the dogs back to me again. This time, it wasn't as physically painful as the night before. My body felt numb, but the hurt was still there, deep inside. They left me alone in the empty room again, and I still had no clothes on. When the door opened a third time, a new wave of fear washed over me. I thought the dogs were coming back. But it was Lena. The relief I felt was a cold, empty thing. I knew she had come to take me away. She smiled as she said, "Kira, get dressed. We're leaving. Your job is done." But I couldn't smile back. The things that happened with the dogs were too awful for me to ever feel happy about this. She led me out of the room to the men. I watched them send money to Lena's account, not a single coin for me. "This is for your girl," one of the men said, looking right at me with a sickening smile. "My dogs really enjoyed their time with her. We can't wait to have her here again." I forced a fake smile to my face and quickly looked at the floor. In my head, I thought, I will never come back here again. After they left, I was taken from the room and Lena drove me straight to a bank. It was a blur. My mind was empty, a blank space where my thoughts used to be. Then we went back to her house. We sat on the couch and she finally spoke. "The men gave me 5 million naira to give to you," she said. I was shocked. 5 million naira just for one night with dogs? How do they even make so much money? I asked, completely baffled. Lena laughed, a cruel, cold sound. "This is just the start," she said. "The more you do this, the more money you'll make from them." "No, Lena, I'm not doing this anymore," I said, my voice firm. "I'll use the 5 million to start a business." But she didn't listen. She kept trying to convince me to go back, telling me that 5 million wasn't enough and that it wasn't new to me anymore. That's when I understood her true role. She had never slept with the dogs herself. She only brought girls like me to the rich men, and they paid her for it. She was not a victim at all. She was their partner. Lena gave me the 5 million naira in cash, a thick wad of money that felt heavy and unreal in my hands. She told me to rent an apartment and buy everything I needed for it. I did exactly what she said. I got a new place, a real home, with a bed and a bathroom of my own, and I bought everything I needed to fill it. After that whole week, I wasn't poor anymore. I still had so much money left from the 5 million. The people in my neighborhood looked at me strangely. They had wondered how a girl like me could afford a new apartment,
and new clothes when I was just a beggar a week ago. They had expected me to keep suffering. But by the weekend, all the money was gone. I had spent it all on new clothes and my new house. I looked at what was left of my money, and I promised myself one thing. I would never go back to that business again. I used the little money I had left to open a small shop in front of my new apartment, hoping to build a real life for myself. But the business wasn't doing well. No customers came to buy anything, and the shelves remained full of things that nobody wanted. Every day, I sat in my small shop watching the street, hoping someone would walk in, but very few did. I was becoming poor again. I started to worry. How would I pay next month's rent? How would I buy food? The money that had seemed like a fortune was disappearing quickly. I tried to be careful, but bills for electricity and water kept coming, and I had to eat. My little shop wasn't making a single dime.